Here, anyway. They got these new kind of visits in here. Conjugals. It means you can come in and bring Elizabeth with you.
You mean private visits?
Yeah. They got this shed out in the grounds and it's got all this grass around it so Elizabeth can play on it.
How long's this been going on?
Oh, they had the first visit today. One of the women had her bloke in and her 2 kids. They're not married, but he's the father of the 2 kids, you know, just like us.
Yeah, well, they're hardly going to let me bring Elizabeth in, are they? I mean, they wouldn't even let me take her out of the home.
Oh, I can arrange all that. It's just a matter of signing the right papers, that's all.
Enjoy the visit, Latham?
Oh, yeah. Thanks ever so much for letting him back in, Miss Bennett.
It's the least I could do. You won't be seeing him again for a while.
What do you mean?
We checked your story about him being Elizabeth's father.
Well, he is.
Oh, yes, we know that now. I just received a telephone call from the department. They confirmed that he was at Barnhurst while you were there.
Well, so what? He's done his time. He's free now.
He's an ex-criminal, Latham. You know the rules. No consorting. I'm sure when I tell Mrs. Davidson the news, you won't be getting a visit from him or your child for as long as you're at Wentworth.
What's up, Chrissy?
Come on, love, you can tell us.
It's that bloody Vera.
Oh, what's she done now?
She's going to stop Mick from coming in and visiting me.
Why? Did he smuggle something in for you?
Oh, of course he didn't. He's got more sense than that. No. Vera's found out he's done time in Barnhurst, and he's been checking up on him and everything.
Well, they must have known that when you told them he was Elizabeth's father.
Well, how was I to know that? I didn't know that, did I?
Yeah, well, you reckoned you didn't care much for blokes anyway.
Yeah, well, Mick's different.
Vera's the only one who can bring Elizabeth in.
Yeah.
Eh?
And now Vera's really gone and buggered that up too.
God, she's a bitch. She wouldn't have left George and me alone, you know, if it wasn't for Fletch.
You bloody woman. Which was her leaving and not Mrs. Morris.
Who are you talking about, Smith?
Oh, no one you'd know, Vera. Just a rotten bitch who gets her kicks by spying on others.
And sticking her nose into people's private affairs.
I would have thought you'd learnt by now. There are no private affairs in here.
Well, as long as you've got anything to do with it anyway.
I do the job I'm paid for, Smith. Now get out of here, all of you.
Bloody screws, they're all the same. They don't care about us. They might as well be humping meat in an abattoir.
What's the matter with her?
Oh, Vera's been stirring Chrissy. She won't let her bloke come visiting anymore.
Bloody Vera sure to be kicked out of this joint.
Yeah, and who are you going to get to replace her? Gillespie or Jock Stewart?
Nah, Jock Stewart's in Pentridge.
Yeah, we know that, Lizzie, but what Bee's saying is that we could end up with somebody worse than Vera.
Wonder who'll I get to replace Mrs. M?
She's not leaving, is she?
Yeah, she is. She's going to be a parole officer.
You mean we'll never see her again?
Oh, of course we will. She'll be hanging around this place just as much as she does now.
I wouldn't bet on it. When's the last time you saw a parole officer around here?
Won't be the same without her. Care for a game?
No, I've got something to do. I'll see you after tea.
She was one of the best ones we ever had, she was. Nobody's going to give a bugger about us now.
I'll give you a game if you like.
Yeah, well, I don't reckon it'll be for good. It'll be just like the last time she chucked it in. And we were the ones who talked her out of it.
Why is she leaving, do you know?
Old man probably cracked down on her because she's working too many night shifts.
Yeah, too much sleep and not enough bed.
Probably just doesn't like being married to a screw. Would you? There's got to be something wrong with somebody who wants to lock people up all the time.
God, you really got it in for him today.
Chrissy, aren't you supposed to be in the rec room with the others?
No, I just wanted to be on my own for a while, Mrs. Morris.
Are you upset about something?
It's my boyfriend, Mick.
Well, what about him? You've had 2 visits from him already.
I know. But Miss Bennett said I wasn't going to be allowed to see him anymore on account of he's been an ex-crim.
I see.
Well, I thought all the officers knew. I mean, I told Mr. Fletcher he was Elizabeth's father. I mean, I've been inside for years, and I...
Well, the inquiry never established who the father was.
I know. I didn't want to get us both into strife, did I? And I just thought when he came in on that visit, they must have known and they were just, turning a blind eye to it. I never thought I'd see him again, Mrs. Morris. I mean, I've had some blokes in my time, but, well, Mick, he was different, And when he just turned up out of the blue like that... Oh, look, if I don't get to see him again, Mrs. Morris, I know he's going to drift off because he wouldn't write to me.
Well, there's not really anything I can do, Chrissy.
I'm not asking for a conjugal or anything like that. Just to see him from time to time.
Well, I'll speak to Mrs. Davidson, but I can't promise anything.
Oh, thanks, Mrs. Morris.
There was enough light in here.
Of course there is. I'm just doing this to make sure Ken gets the letter without the screws having a look first.
Do you reckon the screws are still opening our letters?
I wouldn't put it past them.
Bloody nosy mongrels.
Yeah.
Hey, what you say to Ken?
But you're as bad as the screws.
All right, if you want to keep secrets from your best
I've
friend.
just asked him if he knows that he's allowed to visit again.
Do you reckon the screws would have told him?
Dunno. Can't take anything they say as gospel. That is why I'm writing, Lizzie. If he gets this, then we'll know that the screws are fair dinkum. But if he doesn't, then we'll know it's all a snow job just to turn us into good little girls. And if it is, then it's going to be on for young and old.
Well, she's pretty upset, and I really can't see what harm it would do. I mean, Mick O'Brien seems nice enough, and Lord knows Chrissy needs someone who's prepared to look after her.
Yes, indeed. I admire Vera's efficient use of the rule book, but I do wish you wouldn't use it as a Bible sometimes.
Do you think the department will reopen the inquiry into how Chrissy got pregnant?
I hope not. Her case is due to come before the parole board next week. I'll speak to Ted Douglas about it. I'm sure he'll let sleeping dogs lie.
And Mick O'Brien?
Well, if you really think he'd be a steadying influence on Chrissy, I'm prepared to let him visit, but not unsupervised.
Thanks. I'll tell Chrissy.
Tell me, Meg, what is the general feeling among the women about the conjugal visits?
A little suspicious, I think.
Well, I suppose that's to be expected. Anyway, there's a journalist coming tomorrow morning. I think it's about time we had some good publicity for a change, don't you? Good morning. I'm Erica Davidson, the governor.
Bevan Taylor from the Standard.
Please sit down.
Thank you. I believe you have some new developments in prison reform to tell us about.
Yes, we're rather excited about it, really. We're trying to create a less isolated atmosphere to ease prisoner unrest. We feel that closer contact with their families will achieve this.
And how does this differ from the present system?
Well, at the moment, the women are allowed one visit per week under close supervision. I must point out, however, that all visits are at my discretion, and quite frequently a prisoner receives more than one.
And sometimes they receive none?
If the circumstances warrant.
Meaning?
I think we're wandering a little, don't you?
Right, go on.
The new measures we have introduced allow the women to spend a longer time with their families unsupervised. We have converted a shed away from the main building for the women to receive their visitors. Husbands can bring the children and spend a couple of hours alone with their wives without an officer breathing down their necks all the time.
Give it back to that kid.
And they're free to do whatever they like in this period?
Completely, that is the idea.
So I presume this facility is only open to married women with families?
Initially, yes, though we do recognize a genuine de facto relationship. If the scheme is a success and not abused by the prisoners, then we may consider introducing unsupervised visits for everyone. As you will appreciate, privacy in a place such as this is a rare commodity, whereas it is taken for granted in the outside world. By granting the women that basic right, we hope to instill a sense of responsibility towards themselves and their families.
You mean if they don't behave themselves, they lose the privilege?
No, Mr. Taylor, that is not what I mean.
I'm sorry if I seem cynical, but a lot of people will see it like that. Your inmates included, no doubt. Personally, I'm very impressed with your efforts, Mrs. Davidson. It's about time someone did something to drag the penal system out of the Dark Ages.
Thank you.
Would there be any chance of seeing the visiting compound?
Yes, of course. I'll take you there myself.
Thank you.
Morning, Wendy.
Morning, Mrs. Morris. You look as if you had a busy night.
Yes. Bob and I went over to Bob's brother's place for dinner and ended up playing Monopoly, of all things.
How did you go?
Well, Gail and I were bankrupt by 10 o'clock, but Bob and Hal kept trying to knock each other off the board until 2 o'clock this morning.
Wentworth Detention Centre? Yes, she's right here. Mrs. Morris, it's for you.
Mrs. Morris speaking.
Mrs. Morris, it's Douglas here from the department.
Oh, yes, sir.
I've just received your application. I take it you've given this matter a great deal of thought.
Yes, I have.
Well, I needn't tell you, we'll be sorry to lose you from the service.
Thank you.
Not at all. Good prison officers are hard to come by. Oh, then, of course, there are good probation and parole officers.
Do you mean I've been accepted?
Well, no, I've had a look at your record and your educational achievements. I think we can do something. But I'd like you to come into the office and talk about it. Would tomorrow morning be convenient, say 9:15?
Yes, sir.
Good. We'll see you then. Goodbye.
Good news?
Guess what? I think I've just turned up the get out of jail card.
Naturally, for security reasons, the area has to be fenced off and locked during a visit. But the women have done wonders inside the shed. They've redecorated it all themselves. In fact, it really has been a joint project.
Yep. Just play outside for a while, eh, kids, so Mummy and Daddy can have a little talk. Oh, Struth! They come to chuck peanuts at us now.
I would rather you didn't take photographs without permission. I'm sorry to interrupt your visit, but these gentlemen are reporters, and they would like to hear your opinion of the new visiting arrangements.
Good, what opinion? We haven't been left alone long enough to form one yet.
The family has just arrived. I'm sorry, June. Would you mind if we took a look around? You'll get extra time to make up for it.
I should hope so.
Would you mind if we took a photo of the family?
Yeah, I would.
Okay, sorry.
Just wait till B hears about this.
B reckons the screws are up to something.
Why?
All these conjugal visits and unopened letters. She reckons they're trying to bribe us.
Well, it's all right for the married ones, but some of us haven't got anybody to visit us anyway.
Okay, girls. Smoko.
What are you two up to?
I was just saying to Lizzie, there's no point in the screws trying to bribe us about these special visits because some of us haven't got anybody to visit us anyway.
Exactly. So why do you reckon they're introducing them? I reckon you and Ken should apply. Fat chance.
Oh, I don't know. They let Hazel's bloke in and they're not married.
What's marriage? Just a bit of paper proving you got hitched. We got 2 kids, that proves the same thing.
Yeah, well, I've got a baby too, haven't I? They should let Mick in on a conjugal visit. He's as much my de facto as your bloke.
Listen, you've got to live with a bloke for 2 years before you can prove he's your de facto. And living under the same roof at Barnhurst is not the same thing, so you're lucky that Davo lets Mick in here at all.
Ken Pierce is an ex-convict, isn't he?
Exactly. So there must be some reason why the screws are bending the rules. And don't forget, they can stop Mick visiting you any time they like, so don't give them an excuse. Let's just go along with them until we find out what they're up to.
Oh, don't tell me all the machines have broken down.
No, but the workers have. Mrs. Morris, somebody said that you were going to leave us. Is that true?
No, it isn't, Lizzie. But I might be taking over a job where I'll be able to help you a lot more. But I won't know till tomorrow for sure.
You will let us know, won't you?
I assure you that apart from the department, Mrs. Davidson, the other officers, and my husband, you, Lizzie, will be the first to know.
Oh.
Hazel, you come with me, please. The governor wants to see you straight away.
What for? I haven't done nothing.
It was something to do with conjugal visits, I believe.
Hazel Kent was actually the first prisoner to have an unsupervised visit under the new scheme. No doubt she'll be able to tell you what you want to know.
Good.
Hazel Kent, Mrs. Davidson.
Thank you, Mrs. Morris. Hazel, this is Mr. Bevan Taylor from the Standard newspaper. He'd like to ask you a few questions.
What about?
Mrs. Davidson's been telling us about the new visiting scheme. I want to know what you think about it.
Why me?
Well, it seems you were the first to take advantage of it. How did it feel to be left completely alone with your family?
All right.
Miss Kent. It is Miss Kent, isn't it? Did you think you'd be eligible for the scheme when it was first proposed? I mean, not being legally married.
I don't know. We got 2 kids. I just wanted to see my kids.
It was established there was a genuine relationship before approval was given.
Of course. So, seeing your children was the prime consideration?
Yeah.
More than seeing your husband?
Yeah. No. Oh, I don't know.
We're trying to establish closer contact with the family as a whole.
Yes, I do realize that. Do you consider closer contact with the family will help towards your rehabilitation?
I suppose so.
So you don't just see it as a pleasant way of passing the time?
What are you getting at?
Do you regard it as beneficial to your behavior inside the prison? I mean, it's an obvious opportunity for sexual contact, which you wouldn't ordinarily have.
Well, what do you mean? George and I never did nothing. The kids were there the whole time.
But the opportunity would have been there.
Mrs. Morris, would you take Hazel back, please?
Oh, but that's
Come
not...
along, Hazel.
I see no point in continuing this interview, Mr. Taylor. I phoned your newspaper because it has a reputation for responsible journalism. Wentworth has had its fair share of adverse criticism. I was hoping for a more positive approach from the Standard, but your attitude has been more in keeping with the gutter press. Kindly report to reception on your way out.
I'm sorry you feel that way, Mrs. Davidson. Very sorry.
Mrs. Morris, come in. Sit down. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine, thank you, sir.
Good. Settling into domesticity?
Well, as much as a prison officer can.
I'm just reading about the conjugal visits. Marvellous the press is praising us for changing.
Certainly is.
One thing I'll say about Erica Davidson, she certainly knows how to handle the press. Which reminds me, I must ring her and congratulate her. Now, about your application. Tell me, why do you want to leave Wentworth?
Oh, I don't really. It's just that since Paul Reed left, we haven't really had a social worker. Well, apart from Agnes Forster, of course.
Hmm? Oh, yes, of course.
I realise, of course, that I'm not fully qualified to be a social worker as such. But when Mrs. Davidson told me I could still apply for parole and probation work as a welfare officer, I thought I'd give it a try.
Married life wouldn't have anything to do with this, would it?
Oh, no. Although I must admit my husband isn't happy with the shift work. It's just that I feel I could do something more positive for the women instead of just locking them in their cells every night.
Welfare work isn't exactly 9 to 5, you know.
Oh, yes, I realise that.
Oh, does your husband?
Yes, of course.
Well, I've spoken to the section head about you, and he's as eager to have you start work as I am to keep you at Wentworth. But we've come to a compromise. I'll let you go if he'll assign all the Wentworth cases to you.
Thank you, sir.
Well, there are the formalities for you to go through, of course. There's a 5-day induction course you'll have to do, and thereby lies the problem.
Oh?
Well, there's a course starting tomorrow, if you can start that soon. Otherwise, you have to wait for 3 months.
But what about my notice?
Oh, well, you're not leaving. You're only transferring departments. I'm a wizard unraveling red tape. That is, of course, if you want to start that soon.
I do.
All right, then. We'll report to Mr. Muirhead on the 3rd floor, 9 o'clock tomorrow. All right?
Thank you very much.
My pleasure entirely, Mrs. Morris. And may I wish you all the best in your new post.
This one on foolscap in triplicate, please, Wendy. And this... Oh, go ahead.
Wentworth Detention Centre.
Mrs. Davidson, please. Douglas here.
One moment, please. It's Mr. Douglas. Would you like me to transfer the call to your office?
No, I'll take it here. I think I know why he's phoning. Good morning, Ted.
Erica, I just phoned to congratulate you on some wonderful press coverage.
Oh, thank you. It turned out better than I expected.
Well, the minister is very pleased. His secretary called me first thing.
Well, I must admit I was a little worried. The interview didn't seem to be going as well as I hoped.
You're too modest. I was just saying to Meg Morris, you handled the press very well.
How did her interview go?
I decided to give her a go, Erica. I'm sorry, but you'll be an officer short us from tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
I'm afraid so. Campbell, the instructor, goes on long service leave in a couple of weeks. There's no one here to do his job.
Well, at least we won't be losing her altogether, which is what would have happened if you hadn't accepted her. Is there any chance of a replacement?
Well, the same old story, I'm afraid. I'll do my best.
I know, Ted. Thank you.
I'll be in touch.
Oh, come on, Hazel. Come away from that door and do some work. Standing there isn't going to make her get here any quicker.
I want to see what that bastard journo wrote about me. George is going to go right off his brain when he reads it.
Yeah, well, if it's that bad, Mrs. Davidson will change her mind about the conjugal visits.
I don't give a bugger anyway. No one wants to visit me.
Well, you're bloody selfish, you are.
Shut your face!
Oh, shut up, both of you.
Here she comes.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Prison officer up on immoral charge.
Oh, break it down, Lizzie. Here it is. Families behind bars. Wentworth's visiting hours take on a whole new meaning. At last, after years of repressive policies, it seems the Department of Corrective Services in this state has taken a step into the age of enlightenment. Listen to this. Credit for the new scheme must go to Mrs. Erica Davidson, the present governor of Wentworth, whose dedication to prison reform led to the adoption of the new arrangement.
How do you like that? It was us who told Mr. Andrews.
Mrs. Davidson said, due to the great success of the scheme, unsupervised visits will be made available to all the women and not just those with families.
Where's it say that?
You were right. The screw's just sucking up to us to get Davo in good with the department.
Yeah, she's probably up for a promotion or something.
The families are left entirely to their own devices for 3 hours or more.
Oh, I wonder if Vera's read that. Oh, no, listen to this. Hazel Kent, an unmarried mother, was allowed the first visit in the new facility with her de facto husband. Bastards! My mother thinks we got married in Queensland years ago.
Never mind, love. You can explain it to her. She'll understand.
But why should she have to explain? Why should Hazel have to explain to anyone? And why do they think they can write anything they damn well please about us as if we have no rights at all?
Yeah, I bet they asked Davo what they could write about her.
You bet they did. And the department comes up smelling like roses.
So what? There's nothing we can do about it.
Oh, yes, there is. My bloody oath, there is.
I'm only going by what it said in the paper, Mrs. Davidson. Available to all women, it said.
I am aware of that, Chrissy, but the press does tend to misquote sometimes.
I know me and Mick ain't married, but if we'd have met on the outside, we would have done. And we have got Elizabeth.
By rights, I shouldn't allow him to visit at all. He is an ex-prisoner.
I know that. And I'm ever so grateful, honest. But it's real important to me, to both of us. And I'm not just after the sex or anything like that. It's just that I think if I was to see him a few times, he might stand by Elizabeth and me.
How long has he been out of Barnhurst?
6 months.
Is he on parole?
Oh, no, clean as a whistle. He's got himself a regular job and a really nice little flat.
All right, Chrissy, I'll put you on trust. I had intended to consider the general unsupervised visits much later, but you can be our trial case. Don't let me down. I'll arrange for you to see him tomorrow.
Thanks ever so much, Mrs. Davidson. You won't regret it.
All right, then. Are we all agreed?
Blood oath. Count me in.
Hazel?
Oh, I suppose so.
OK, then. We spread the word around to the rest of the blocks. We're not going to let the screws step all over us just so they can get their promotion.
Hey, guess what? That newspaper was right. Davo is going to allow unsupervised visits. She's letting Mick come in tomorrow.
Tough luck.
Bloody marvellous luck, you mean? Old Chrissy's eyes are going to be shining tomorrow, girls.
I said tough luck because it won't be happening. We just took a vote. We're not going to play the screws game anymore, and we're boycotting the visiting scheme. And that means everyone.
There's no point in getting uptight about it.
Isn't there?
Well, I don't see what you're so upset about. At least you've got somebody to come in and visit you. Some of the women haven't got anybody. No kids, nothing.
Oh, fat lot of good that does me, doesn't it, when Bee's put a bloody big fat foot down?
Yeah, well, you're not on your own, you know. I mean, there are other women in the same boat, and we've all got to stick together on this against the screws.
Why? 'Cause Bee says so. I mean, the women can't see how bloody stupid they're being. The whole point of these visits is that they get a bit of time on their own with their families. They're cutting off their noses despite their stupid faces.
So what are you going to do about it, huh? Are you going to take on Bee and all the others on your own?
Ah! Stand up, you bloody thing.
Isn't that what the actress said to the bishop?
It's very good. Pottery's one of your strong points.
Thanks.
Have you heard from Ken Pierce yet?
I don't even know whether I got my letter or not.
Well, of course he did. They're not censoring the mail now.
Well, that's quite a feather in your cap, isn't it? Did Mrs. Davidson also pat you on the back for the conjugal visiting suggestion?
What are you on about, Bee?
Don't you read the newspapers? She really stole your thunder. I bet it got her in good with the department.
Well, surely you don't think she's after any personal credit. She was simply the spokeswoman for the prison.
Wouldn't have done her any harm, though, would it? Look, Mrs. Davidson usually plays pretty fair with us. And I can understand you wanted to keep in good with the boss. But I am not going to stand by and watch those screws abuse these women's rights. Not for a departmental pat on the back.
That's not true, Bee.
Well, nor was the article. Left alone to their own devices, it said. Oh, yeah, if you don't mind Vera as an audience. And what about the bit about Hazel not being married?
Mrs. Davidson actually stopped the interview because she thought it was heading towards sensationalism. Otherwise, she was amazed at how positive it was. I mean, with good publicity like this scheme could spread to other prisons.
Well, I suppose it could, if it was successful.
There's no reason why it shouldn't be.
Well, yes, there is. We won't be in it.
This scheme was for your benefit. It was even your suggestion.
Well, not according to the newspapers, it wasn't.
And all the women are boycotting?
100%.
Come in.
Can you spare 5 minutes?
Of course, Meg. I've been trying to catch up with you all day.
I'm just about to sign off. My last day as a prison officer. I can't believe it's all happened so quickly.
We should have arranged a little party for your retirement.
Oh, please, no send-off speeches and flowers. I couldn't stand it. Especially as I'll be back in a week or so wearing my welfare officer hat.
Well, we won't be seeing as much of you in here. If you are as successful a parole officer as you were a prison officer, then most of your work will be outside Wentworth.
Thank you.
I can't say I won't miss you, Meg, but I know you're doing this job for all the right reasons. Come in.
Meg, Mrs. Davidson, did you know that the women have decided to boycott conjugal visits?
Well, it's the first I've heard of it. Why on earth are they doing that?
They've got it into their heads that the whole idea was for your personal glory.
Oh, that's ridiculous. Is this another one of Smith's tricks?
Yes, but she says all the women are behind her.
I wonder. It's one thing to support Smith with a campaign for better food or something, but when it concerns their families, I don't think she'll get their support. Chrissy Latham certainly won't give up her visit without a struggle.
I think it could lead to trouble.
I agree. Smith's capable of enforcing her will on most of the women.
I know, but I didn't think she would now that we've lifted the ban on Ken Pierce. It's a privilege she could lose.
Was their relationship really that strong?
Excuse me.
I think it was a little more than wishful
Yes,
thinking on
that's
both
right.
their parts.
Would you notify
Nothing
reception,
happened. There
please?
wasn't time.
Thank you.
But he certainly had a remarkably steadying influence on her.
I'd like to meet the man who could work such miracles.
Well, now's your opportunity. He's here to visit Smith.
I'm on my way.
I must be off too. I want to say goodbye to the women before I go.
Righto, Meg. Thank you for your support in the past, and please try to make as many classification meetings as you can.
It's all very well for the department to transfer Meg out of here at a day's notice, but you'd think they'd try and help with the replacement.
Well, no doubt an application's gone through.
Good afternoon, Mr. Fletcher, Miss Bennett. I understand arrangements have been made for me to see P. Smith.
Well, you won't be taking that in.
No, of course not. I'll leave it in your good care, if that's all right.
You'll have to be searched first. Take your jacket off and empty your trousers pockets, please.
Well, I made sure I brought nothing in. I don't want this visit to end up like the last one.
You can be sure it won't.
You must be Ken Pierce.
Yes, that's right. Don't tell me I was expected.
David Andrews, the education officer.
Just a minute.
Oh, come on.
One of the disadvantages of being a celebrity.
Look, I'd like a few words
Not
with you.
now, Mr. Andrews. Mr. Pierce is here to see B. Smith, and that is his only reason for being here.
Yes, perhaps you'd like to bring Smith to the interview room, please, Miss Bennett. This way, Mr. Pierce.
Thank you.
Oh, truth. Lizzie, you've just cost me 40 cents.
Eh?
We're playing 10 cents a match, and live ones are worth 5 dead ones.
Oh, sorry.
Well, you know what they say. Smoking is a wealth hazard.
Oh, dear. Hello, who's the new inmate?
I thought you'd better get used to seeing me like this. I won't be wearing my uniform anymore.
Well, if you don't know what to do with it, we can always put it to good use, eh?
Yeah, we'd find something to do with it.
I don't think so. Well, I've just come to say goodbye. See you all in a week.
Funny, a lot of the women say that when they leave here.
I just hope I'm in a position to help you all a lot more than I can at the moment.
Yeah, a week may be too late.
B, there's a visitor on the way in to see you.
I can. Well, he could let me know. Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Morris. Good luck. See you next week.
Oi, watch it! Oh, Mrs. M, seeing you didn't give us much notice as you told us you would do, and we couldn't have a party, I brought you a little present.
Oh, Lizzie, you shouldn't have.
Oh, it's nothing, just a little thing Sid gave me.
Oh, Lizzie. Oh, Lizzie, I can't take this.
Oh, Sid would have wanted you to, especially after that day you let him take us to the hospital.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Where's Smith?
I think you'll find she's in a cell.
I've got better things to do than to chase after her.
Mrs. M, when you're looking for jobs for parolees, can you get one for Miss Bennett?
I gather you don't altogether approve of my being back in Wentworth, Mr. Fletcher.
My opinion's of no importance whatsoever.
Hello, B.
Hi, Ken.
It's been a long time.
You all right?
Things are going very well. Plenty of work, of course. That never stops. I even got paid for a magazine article I haven't used yet.
Let me know when it comes out.
Yeah, sure. Mind you, the extra money will come in handy, what with Debbie getting married soon. Whoever thought of that crazy idea about the bride's family paying for the wedding?
What's her fellow like?
He's a decent bloke. Got a good trade behind him. He's a fitter and turner. Got a good head on his shoulders, too.
I hope it goes well for her.
And she's got a lot to thank you for, B.
Oh, good. I only asked her if she really wanted to end up like me.
Well, there's far more to it than that, you know. My mother couldn't get over the change in her when she got back.
Do you see much of her?
Well, she writes every week. Brought a fiancé down to meet me a while back.
No, I meant your wife.
No.
Do you think there's much chance of you ever getting back together? Well, I mean, it's none of my business.
No, I'm sorry, B. There's nothing I want to say about it. Marion and I just can't live together.
Fair enough.
All right, Smith, time's up. Come on.
Well, if you're ever passing this way again, feel free to drop in.
I'd love to. And you keep writing, eh? Makes a change to get letters covered in wax instead of blue pencil.
Go on, Smith. Off you go.
Bye.
Bye, love.
It took a long time to say goodbye.
No, I was chatting to Colleen in the staff room. Didn't notice the time go by. Look what the officers have given me. I mean, I feel quite guilty. I'm not leaving altogether.
It shows how much they appreciate you.
Yes. Well, I better be going. Bob will be wondering where I am. I'll see you next week.
Sure. Best of luck, Mick.
Thanks.
Right, take your jacket off and empty your pockets.
Right?
You heard me.
You're not searching him again, are you?
What's it look like?
That's okay, Mr. Andrews. I'm used to this. I visit quite a lot of prisons, you know.
Now, what I'd like to talk to you about are your ideas on prison reform.
Sure. From what I read in the papers, Wentworth's become far more progressive.
What, you mean the conjugal visits?
Yeah. I heard Mrs. Davidson's not the sole force behind their instigation.
Well, I did speak to her about it, but it was really the women themselves who suggested it.
Well, it's nice to know they had someone to listen.
Just sign off, please. I'll escort you through to the gates.
Look, I've finished for the day. Care for a drink?
Mr. Andrews, could you keep your social life outside the prison?
Sorry. Don't accept till we're outside the gates.
Wonder what's happened to B. Ken must have taken her out to dinner.
Yeah, well, I hope she brings back a doggy bag.
Hey, Bea, how'd it go?
Oh, we had a good old chinwag.
Yeah, that's all you'd ever get.
And what is that supposed to mean?
It means you've got bucklies of getting a conjugal with Ken. What about all them other poor bitches who have missed out seeing their families because of you?
Like you, I suppose.
Yeah, and Hazel. There's June, Lil, Bev. There's Marie in maternity, Phyllis in D block. They've all missed out because of Queen Bee. They'd bloody serve you right if they told you where you could stick your bloody boycott.
Now, you listen good, Chrissy. I am boss cocky around here because the other women want me to be. And they do not want the governor taking credit for all these lovely unsupervised visits and then have Vera breathing down their necks every time their hubbies and kids come to call. Now, like you said, it doesn't affect me, so I am doing it for them.
Oh, you're all heart.
And if I hear of anyone accepting an unsupervised visit, I will make sure they are in no condition to enjoy it. Do you understand? Well...
Yes.
Well, come on, get a move on. Got a date with that boyfriend of yours today, Latham.
Yes, Miss Bennett?
Pity Smith told you not to use the visiting compound. You probably would have enjoyed the extra freedom.
Don't let us stir you.
Well, perhaps Smith can arrange for 5 minutes in the storeroom. It's very cosy in there, isn't it, Smith?
Tried it, have you, Vera?
Being insolent to an officer. Just for that, you'll lose your conjugal visiting rights. Now get to the showers, all of you, or do you have to wait for Smith's permission for that, too? It's a pity your sour grapes stopped the others from getting the benefit.
Well, you'd know all about sour grapes, wouldn't you, Vera? And it's a pity you can't remember what it's like to have a bloke interested in you.
Ken Pierce has already proved he can't be trusted. It could easily happen again.
Good grief. There's official forms for everything.
Well, that's the public service for you.
Good morning. I'm your instructor, John Campbell. Sorry I'm late. No doubt you already looked at the papers you've been given and are totally confused.
It all is a bit daunting.
Oh, I'm sure Mrs. Morris is used to a bit of departmental paperwork. However, my job in the next 5 days is to guide you through this bureaucratic maze. Now, it's a fairly intensive study, so I hope you've kept your evenings free to write up your notes.
Oh, there goes my date tonight.
Oh, don't tell me they're boycotting your classes as well.
No, I'm in between lessons.
I'm surprised your school's lasted as long as it has. The conjugal visits were a flash in the pan.
Well, I'm sure that's only temporary, once the women get used to the idea.
It's more trouble than it's worth.
I disagree.
If you think it means instant rehabilitation, you're wrong. Most of these schemes have been tried before and none of them work.
Well, perhaps because no one in authority wants them to work.
Oh, rubbish. It's the attitude of the women. They're all no-hopers.
I've worked with no-hopers before. It hasn't always been unsuccessful.
And what do you get out of this? Personal satisfaction?
As a matter of fact, yes.
Why? You're a teacher, not a social worker. Or does the education department hand out merit badges for prison reform?
Oh, for goodness sakes. Look, what good does it do to separate a woman from her husband and kids? It only breeds resentment. Resentment leads to violence and unrest, which you claim are reasons to ban the visit.
Oh, just a minute.
Well, I've heard your narrow-minded views on the subject before, Vera. Now, you listen to me. I saw a man yesterday submitted to the indignity of a thorough search, both before and after a supervised visit. Now, a lesser man would never set foot in prison again, and there would go a prisoner's contact with the outside world. Oh, yes. The women are claiming that the privacy of their conjugal visits is being spoiled by the interference of a certain senior officer.
That is a lie.
Well, you don't have to tell me, Vera. I'm only a teacher. Just be honest with yourself for once. Ask yourself if the attitude of people like you has done anything to improve the standards of prison living. Now, if your answer is yes, you're living a lie.
I agree we should encourage conjugal visits, but if the women have decided to boycott, there's very little I can do.
They resent your taking credit for the scheme.
I realise that, but I can't help the way they interpret some very good publicity for Wentworth. Heaven knows we get little enough. Besides, that's not their only complaint. Apparently, Miss Bennett was overzealous in her duties when Kent had her visit.
Still, they're minor points compared to the benefits, aren't they?
Prisoners are traditionally negative in their attitude towards beneficial schemes. They feel it's better not to have a privilege at all rather than to lose it just because they misbehave.
I think we could do a deal with B. Smith.
It's a little premature to be looking for compromises, Mr. Andrews. I think when it gets down to the actual visits, Smith is going to lose a great deal of her support.
So you think the boycott will just peter out?
Well, Chrissy Latham's due for a visit this afternoon. Let's wait and see what happens then.
I've come to see Chrissy Latham.
Mr. O'Brien, isn't it? From Barnhurst. 18 months for theft.
So?
You're lucky the governor has seen fit to allow this visit. If it was up to me, I'd have you charged with consorting.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, Mr. Fletcher, O'Brien's here to see Latham.
Right, take your jacket off. You'll have to be searched. Empty your pockets, please. Can't expect a conjugal visit without a little bit of inconvenience, Mr. O'Brien.
What's the time, Lizzie?
10 minutes to smoko.
Well, he should have been here by now.
Can't wait to see him, can you?
And that's all you'll be doing, isn't it, Chrissy?
And you can rack off.
Just you remember what I said about that visiting suite. It is off limits, right?
Yes, all right.
Latham, your visitor's here. I presume you'll be using the family visiting room?
No, Mr. Fletcher. It's just going to be a normal visit, thanks.
All right, suit yourself. Come on. No physical contact, Latham. This is an ordinary visit. There's no special privileges. Could you supervise the visit, please, Miss Bennett? I have to report to the governor.
What the bloody hell's going on? I thought this was supposed to be a private visit.
Yeah, it was supposed to be. I had to knock it back.
Why?
Oh, some woman in there thinks she's real important. She came on a bit heavy.
Yeah, well, so much for me bringing Elizabeth in.
Oh, that won't last long. No, probably next time you come, you'll be able to bring her in.
Did you manage to get me a name on a birth certificate?
No, not yet. Still, Mrs. Morris, she's going to be the new welfare worker. She'll fix it up for us. What's the matter?
How much has she checked up on me?
Oh, you don't want to worry about her. She reckoned you weren't going to come in here again. Mrs. Davidson was real good about it, though. What's worrying you, Mick?
Nothing. Skip it.
Yeah, I'm ever so glad you could come.
Yeah, so am I.
Remember those afternoons in Barnhurst? When we used to crawl through that hole in the fence? Go in that shed? Hey?
Yeah, I'll be glad when you're out of here and we don't have to hide anymore.
Oh, bugger being a bleeding boycott.
I think it's rather a compromising solution.
I agree, but it's a solution nevertheless. What's the point in letting Smith be top dog if you're not going to use it?
Yes, but I wouldn't like some of the press to get hold of it, particularly some of the scandal rags. Come in.
Latham's visitor is here, Mrs. Davidson. But she's refused the visiting room. I'm pretty sure that Smith made a decision for her.
Well, do we try my idea or not?
Bring Smith here, please, Mr. Fletcher. I suppose it's worth a try.
What's up, Chrissy? Oh, it was Mick, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was him. He was disappointed we weren't on our own. We both were. Where's Her Majesty, then?
Fletcher came and carted her off to see old Davo. I don't know what about.
Hey, how come you're back so soon?
Bloody Vera, she was having a go at Mick. Said she'd been doing some checking up on him, so he got all edgy and left early.
I think he'd be used to screws like Vera by now.
Yeah. There was something niggling him, though. I don't know what it was.
Okay, ladies, as of now, conjugal visits are back on.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. You could have said so an hour ago.
What did old Davo want, B?
Hey, you look as though you got something out of her.
Yeah, could say that. I reckon pretty soon we'll be getting unsupervised visits from just about anyone we like.
Eh? How come?
Well, if I can get one from Ken, I reckon anyone can. What's the matter, cat? Got your tongues?
I reckon old Davo bought you off, Pete.
Yeah. How about all that publicity stuff and the screws interfering and everything?
Davo will look after that. She wants this scheme to be a success.
She said that, did she? Your friend, Mrs. Davidson?
Now, what is that supposed to mean?
I'll tell you what it means. It means you sold us out. All this big talk about standing together. Not letting the screws walk all over us. You couldn't give a bugger.
Just you watch it, Chrissy.
Unsupervised visits were on the go anyway. How do you think I saw Mick? You reckon you're top dog, do you? Top bloody son, more like it.